Hey guys, welcome to my review of my 2016 BMW M4. So if you guys have been following my videos, you know I just did a video on a 2018 VW Golf R that I just picked up, and I compared it to this car, and I thought it was only fair, since I've never done a video on the M4, to do one for that, so I could give the M4 its justice when doing the comparison. So we're going to do the basic same video we did for the Golf on the M4. So let's just get started. So again, this is a 2016 M4. I got it 2 years ago around Memorial Day, and I never did a video on it. So if you guys are not familiar with the M4s, this is the F series. So just like the Golfs have the Mark series, this is the F series for the M's, and it's an F82, and the 2 stands for the two-door coupe, as opposed to the F80, which would be the sedan, and the F83, which would be the convertible. So this is an F82. It is in a color called Avis Blue, which is not a standard M color that you can get. So this is what they call BMW Individual, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's the color Avis Blue. So why don't we just start looking over the body. So BMW's bodies on their cars are, you know, just beautiful. That's something you just can't deny. We just take a quick walk around here, you can kind of see all the curves and the lines. But just a couple of notes. So again, we're just going to do a comparison to the Golf, but on the front here we have the M4 badge, just like we had on the R, except this has a vent here, and this is not decorative. This is actually a functional vent where the air actually comes through the across the brake discs and calipers to cool them, and it actually comes through this little gill right here. So this is actually a functional gill on the M's. Just like on the Golf, has comfort access, so again, you can lock the car by touching it, and you can unlock it by just holding the handle, and then it unlocks. Same thing. If you have the key fob in your pocket or somewhere close, then it'll automatically do that. This does have 19-inch wheels, just like the Golf, except of course, if we look over here, they're a lot wider. So much bigger tires as far as the width goes on the M's. So these are the 437M wheels, so that's the name for these particular wheels. They're really nice 5-spoke wheels, really easy to clean. They are a machined face with a gloss black paint on the insets, and then it has sort of a smoked clear on the top of it. So it's got the little M logo on the wheel there, and all the calipers have are painted blue with the M. So it just happens to be that they happen to match the exterior of my car by coincidence, so it's kind of neat. But that is the standard caliper color on all colors, no matter what you get. So, but and you can see here, if you look here, the rotors on this thing are cross drilled, so they've got the holes in it, and they are gigantic, huge rotors on this car. So the braking's pretty amazing on this car. So same thing on the front wheels here. You got the M logo on the calipers. 19-inch wheels. These are a little thinner on the front, and these are also Continental Conti Sports on the M. So they actually have the same basic tires on both cars. Something else to note on the side here, if you notice, we've got some sensors here for park distance, etc., but there's also a camera right here. So they have side cameras on these cars, and there's also a camera actually on the mirror here. So these are side cameras, and then on the mirror itself, these have a really cool design on them. And these have Unlike the Golf mirrors, there's no icon here for the blind spot. The blind spot's actually back here with a little light that lights up. The difference with these mirrors are they are chromatic, so they will dim on the outside where only the inside one does it on the Golf R. The other thing is it has this beautiful black shadow gloss trim going around it instead of chrome, which is really nice. And then the fuel filler door is a lockable, just like it is on the Golf, where it just locks and unlocks when you unlock the car. On the top here we have a carbon fiber roof. So you have two choices on the M. You can get a carbon fiber or you can get a moon roof with a steel. So I chose the carbon fiber instead of the moon roof. I don't really like the sun roofs, and so carbon fiber looks really nice. And of course you have the shark fin antenna for all the same things for satellite radio, etc. This one's a little bit bigger on the M. On the back here, you have the tail lights, which they're not full LED like it is on the Golf, but they do look cool because they light up on these like sort of horizontal strips. So they're really neat looking. Obviously the back has a really nice wide aggressive look on it. And then we have the quad tip dual exhaust, and that is a true dual exhaust at the bottom there. Now this carbon fiber diffuser that you see at the bottom here, this was something I put on. By default from the factory it just has a blue, same color as the body, just kind of a flat diffuser. And this one does a couple things. One, it looks cooler because it's the carbon fiber that matches the roof, but two, it also goes down a little lower to cover the muffler at the bottom, which you would normally see a little bit of on the factory default one. So BMW has this cool like body line that runs the entire length of the car, which really makes it kind of stand out. On the front of the car, on the hood, we have that sort of like that turbo hood bump, which is nice design. And it's got some great hood lines going down it, just like the Golf had that one hood line, but this has actually two running down it. And then on the front of the car here, we got a bunch of things going on. We've got some LED headlights. So these are adaptive headlights, just like on the Golf R. And they're full LED, and of course they have those angel eyes, which are the daytime running lights, which are the round rings, which look really cool during the day. And it also has cornering lights just on like the Golf R, so same thing as far as the headlights go. These are the M Performance black gloss grills. By default from the factory it's the same grill, except the outer part here is chrome, and I replaced them with the full gloss black ones. And then just like the Golf R, there's a lot of cooling down here. There's radiators on both of these side ports. You got the center radiator. The M actually has a radiator that is horizontal running on the bottom here. So for cooling for the intercoolers, the turbos, everything. Same kind of design. So no fog lights, just like on the R, because there's too much space being taken up by all these radiators to cool. This has track level cooling, so if you're going to be racing on the track, this is kind of what you want. Just like on the R, we have cameras coming out from the rear view, on the back of the rear view mirror. So there's sensors down there and there's cameras. That's used for all the safety systems, and the you'll see before next the heads-up display, etc., for the reading of the speed limit signs, things like that. It does have headlight washers on the front of it here, which I would never use because they come out and they spit all kinds of stuff all over the front of your car. But obviously it's just a jet stream of washer fluid that comes out, and you know, it's just for cleaning your headlights. Although if you keep the car washed, you never have to worry about that, so I'm not sure why you need it. Alright, and I think that's the basic exterior of the car. It does have a fairly steep, not steep, low profile line, you know, for the rear, so it's a pretty low angle for the rear window. Oh, one other note, the deck lid here is actually carbon fiber. So in order to save weight, BMW is using carbon fiber on the deck lid here, and actually on the front fenders. These fenders are actually a composite, almost like some kind of a plastic. So again, to save weight. And then the hood itself is actually aluminum. So there's a lot of components on here that are trying to save weight. Alright, so let's take a look at some of the pieces on the interior. So first on the trunk here, it has an electric latch for the trunk. So there's actually just a little button you push underneath here, and then it releases the trunk, and it opens up here. So pretty standard trunk. You can lift up the bottom here. It clips in right here to hold it up while you're in here, and it just has a cubby down here for storage. And actually, if you took this whole floor out, you would see there'd be a place for the fuse box, fuse panels back there that's easily accessible to add accessories on if you needed to. So that's where they locate it. For weight distribution, they put the battery in the back here. So it's actually underneath this little section right here if you need to get to the battery. And this is just a little BMW oil kit. Has a quart of oil in there and a little paper funnel in case you need to add some oil to your car. There's some cubby storage on this side, and then there's a 12-volt power supply right here if you need to get to anything. And just like the Golf, it has these little hooks for grocery bags. These are actually better positioned and better hooks than the ones in the R. But it has the same type of thing. And then it has rear seats go down. This is again a 60-40 split folding rear seat. Okay, not quite as much room in the back of the M as the R, because they have all the wheel wells are sort of intruding inside the compartment here deeper than they do on the R, but still not bad. And then it has all the tie downs here for the tethers and the cargo nets if you wanted to hold something. They also have this kind of neat little elastic band right here that you can just shove something in if it's just something small that you need to secure for whatever reason in the back. So. And then, oh, they have this little handle right here as an emergency trunk release if you're stuck in the trunk. So if you're planning on kidnapping somebody, it's probably not the car to do it in because they can get out. So just keep that in mind. And then it just has some handles underneath here that you can just quickly grab and then close the trunk. The rear camera is right here, so it's right underneath the deck lid here. That's obviously when you put it in reverse, so you get the display on the front. And then of course it has all the park distance sensors in the bumper, just like pretty much every other car today. So when talking about this exhaust, we'll talk about it a little later, but it has valves in it that direct the flow of the exhaust. It is a true dual exhaust, so it's coming from the engine. You know, it's a 6-cylinder, so each set of 3 cylinders gets their own exhaust. So unlike the R, which comes out as a single pipe from the 4-cylinder engine to the back and then splits into 4 tips, this is actually a true dual exhaust. Oh, and it does have the kick sensor feature, so if you put your foot underneath the diffuser right here, then it'll actually open up the trunk. So that's a little extra feature they have on the M's they don't have on the R. So that's the trunk area. Okay, as far as the engine goes, this is a 3-liter straight 6-cylinder. So BMW straight 6-cylinders are the smoothest running engines in the world. They've had them forever. This, of course, has a much beefier bottom end because it's the M engine, but twin turbo. So each of the 3 cylinders gets a turbo and also gets an exhaust. So true dual exhaust and twin turbo. So 2 turbos. You have this massive intercooler on the top here. And so basically you know, tons of cooling on this car. Unlike the Golf, this is shoehorned in here, so it's a really tight space to work in. You probably have to take a lot of stuff off to get, depending what you're trying to get at, to work on it. So not as easy to work on as far as the engine compartment goes. It does have this huge carbon fiber reinforcement bar that goes from each of the strut towers on each side and connects to the front. Again, this is all for stiffness and handling of the car. And then I don't know if you can see it back here, but there's an aluminum brace that goes from this side all the way to the other side of the car, and that's where this strut actually attaches to. So again, it ties the entire side, the 2 sides of the car together with the front. It makes it super stiff. There's also a big X-frame aluminum plate on the bottom that does sort of the same thing. That's holding the 2 sides of the car and the front together for stiffness. So really, like, just increases the handling of the car. This car does not have a insulator pad like the Golf did. And then this is the tag for the actual paint. So if you do get a BMW individual car, it has a special tag underneath the hood that shows you that it's an individual car with the actual color code of the car. So you can see there it says Avis Blue Metallic. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, you can request a certain color from BMW if they don't make the car. And the M's only come in like a couple of colors, and some of them are pretty gaudy. The blue that it comes in, it was like it's called Yas Marina blue, and it's a very light, like almost Smurf blue. So I didn't like it, and so I was able to order the car in this individual color. Although it does add close to 8 weeks of production time onto your car when you're ordering it. So it does take a lot longer, and it's a pretty expensive option. It's another $5,000 to get the car painted in the color you want. And it's not a guarantee you'll get that color. You can request it, and then they'll give you either that color that you want, or they'll give you some options on colors close to it. But it's not a 100% guarantee, but they actually at least give you that option if you needed it. And that's, of course, for jumping your car, that's the positive battery cable terminal, because remember, the battery's in the back in the trunk, so you can't access it if you need to ever jump the car or something like that. So this has been a staple on BMWs forever, so pretty standard. So this is 425 horsepower. I believe it's 403 foot-pounds of torque, if I remember correctly. So a lot of horsepower and torque, especially coming out at the back end there. So again, with the dual clutch transmission, and this size engine and this amount of power and torque, you have to be careful, because if you are being too aggressive and you don't have any of the safety controls on, you can easily lose control of the car. So you just have to be smart when you're driving the car and know the car's capabilities and know what you're doing. So again, you probably didn't notice it, but when I just pulled the the hood open, I didn't have to do a latch underneath, because there is no secondary latch here. It's just all controlled within the side, and they have actually 2 latches, one on each side here to hold the hood down. So when you close it, you have to slam it kind of hard, because otherwise it won't latch on both sides. There you can, I don't know if you can see it, sometimes the LEDs flicker in the videos, but that's the little angel eyes that go around the headlights. Okay, so I think that's it for pretty much the basics, exterior, interior of the car. You could probably look under here for a second, see if we can get a view of it, but you can kind of see the dual exhaust running down here. And they come into this one big sort of muffler underneath here. And then the gases will flow. If you can see it under here, but there's the pipe splits here and it goes into two different areas within this muffler. And depending which way the gases are flowing is how the sound changes, and you know, whether it's coming directly from the exhaust straight out through here or whether one of the valves is closed. And what happens is when the valve is closed, the exhaust gases actually move to the opposite side. So if it's coming out this side, it actually goes across internally in the muffler and comes out the other side. So depending on the position of the exhaust valves internally, it changes where the flows come out and also changes the sound. And so that's all those different driving modes, whether you're in comfort mode, Sport, Sport Plus, or whatever. Just kind of like on the Golf R where you had all those different driving modes and how it changes the exhaust sound. It's kind of the same way, except this one is a true dual exhaust, and it's doing a lot more inside that that muffler back here. So some people think because it's a single muffler, these are just tips that are just for show, but that's not the case. These are actually 100% functional on the M's as opposed to the R, which they really are just for show. They're just 4 tips for show. These are actually functional. So just a little FYI on that. And actually, while we're under here, we can probably take a quick look at the, this is a multi-link suspension under here. You can kind of see it's all aluminum. So again, lightweight, 5-link suspension on the rear here. And I don't know if you can see it back there, but it's just a massive differential. So there's a ton of technology going on in this car underneath here that you can't see. Alright, so we will go through all the techie stuff on the inside next, and then we'll do the same thing we did with the R, and we'll do our test drive. Oh, one other thing I forgot. The BMW does have an exterior lock on it that the key fob has a slide out key that you can actually unlock the car without the electronic locks in case something's wrong with them, so you can get in the car. The Golf actually has a cover there that you actually have to pry off to get to the keyhole. And you know, that's a little dangerous because you could easily slip, scratch your paint and everything like that. So I prefer if the keyhole was actually exposed on just the driver's side like it is on the BMW, but the Volkswagens do have it covered with a cap and that you have to pry off to get to the key lock. So that's the one difference. Okay, so this does not have a frame around the window like the R does because it's a 2-door coupe. So when you actually open the door, if you look at the top here, you'll see the window actually drops down. And then when you close the door, it'll close and then the window will go up to seal. So that's the way they keep a great seal on the window when it doesn't have any frame around it. Now the rear windows don't move or do anything, they're all fixed windows, but it's a 2-door coupe, so you don't really need it. So if we look at the inside of the car here, you can see we've got the door panel here. There's they've got a mid-range speaker right here. There's a tweeter up here. This is the Harman Kardon sound system. We'll talk about that a little bit later. These door panels are gorgeous. They're full leather. I did get the full merino leather package, so that means that the door panel, all this material here is leather, stitched leather. You can see this is the 2-tone interior. This is called Sakura Orange, and it's a 2-tone black and orange. And then you can see like the stitching is sort of like they have this contrast stitching going in the black here, so you got orange stitching in the black material. The pockets are pretty, I mean, they've got a pretty good size in them as far as storage goes. And then they're underneath this black chrome trim here. There's a LED strip that lights up at night for ambient lighting. On the door sills, they do have the M4 door sills here. These do not light up, they're just chrome door sills, but they do look Pretty cool. And then if we look at the interior themselves, these are the M seats, built-in headrests. Again, Sakura orange. This is merino leather, and the seats are pretty comfortable. As I mentioned in my previous video, they're a tiny bit harder than the Golf seats, but they're definitely comfortable. They're also just a little bit more adjustable, so these adjust all the same adjustments, forward and back, up and down, tilt the bottom, tilt the back, lumbar, up and down, in and out. But these also have an additional feature where the bolsters right here, you can actually move in and out and make them tighter or looser depending on, you know, how big you are. The other thing is the passenger side has the full power, just like the driver's side, unlike the Golf R. So the only thing the passenger side does not have is the memory function. Only the driver's side has that. But besides that, it's full power. So just a couple things on the seat also. This logo right here, this M logo, lights up at night, so that looks kind of cool when you have the headlights on and the interior is lit up. And if we look in the back here, it's pretty standard in the back, just like on the Golf. There's 2 speakers on the rear decks, and there's 2 in each of the quarters. Okay, so in the back here, you got 6 speakers just in the back alone. I referenced this before. It has sort of this cubby in the middle here, which is kind of a waste. I'm not sure why they just didn't put cup holders, but you can see because of the hump, only 2 people would ever be able to fit back here. And unlike the Golf, the roof line is low in the back here, so if you have super tall people, it might be a little bit of a squeeze, although the seats do sink down a little bit lower to accommodate for that. They have some hooks up here for, like, you know, suits or clothes that you want to hang or whatever it may be. And then of course you have your buttons for your overhead lighting in the rear. So all that's pretty much standard. One of the differences in the rear here, you have the flow control for the temperature, but you also have there's a temperature knob here, so the rear passengers can actually affect the temperature coming out to them. And then there's a 12-volt outlet down here. Well, one other thing about the rear seats is there is no center pass-through like the Golf has, so you can't stick like skis or something through the middle while you have people seated in the back. You pretty much have to put one of the sides of the seats down to be able to do that. So that is the one little difference. And then these are the M4 logo mats, which I talked about in the other video because these were extra. Just like the Golf, it comes with plain black, and you have to pay extra if you want the mats with the M logos on them. The other thing that this car has is these button right here to move the seat back and forward. So if you actually have the seat closed, you can actually just put your hand back here and move the seat forward to get somebody in or out if you want to, without having to move the seat back. So that's one extra feature that the M has that the R does not. Okay, as far as the glove box goes, pretty standard. There's really nothing in here in the glove box. It doesn't have the cooling feature like in the R, and there's no, the CD player and all that stuff's not in here. The only thing that's in here is a lock where you can lock out the trunk. So if you're valeting your car, then they can't get in the trunk. So it's a little switch right here. And then when you close your glove box, you know, there is a lock. Unlike the Golf, this does have a lock where you can lock it, and so they can't change that switch then. So that's pretty much for valeting. Again, because it's the full merino, you have full leather all over the glove box. The dash is all full leather. And this makes a huge difference on the feel of the interior. It's just more luxurious when you get all this leather everywhere. Has the contrast stitching. This is also known as the hockey puck right here, where they have this sort of like orange running up and then across the glove box. Oops, sorry guys, quick edit. I don't know what I was saying. Sometimes I make these videos and I don't have a script. I'm just doing it off the top of my head, and my mind is thinking one thing and the words come out different. But this is obviously not the hockey puck. It's known as the hockey stick because of its shape. It looks like a hockey stick, the orange band going from the console up here across the glove box. So it's the hockey stick, not hockey puck. It does have full true carbon fiber trim. So this is carbon fiber, this is real carbon fiber trim. And of course then you have your standard vents with flow control. In the center here you have again more carbon fiber trim, and there's the iDrive control, which we'll go over later. And that's obviously the shifter and all the buttons to control the different modes of the car. We'll cover all that stuff. There's a cup holder here. Again, sort of the same size as the R. There's really not, you can't put giant cups in here, but you can put some. And then there's a little cubby right here for 12 volt power supply. And then I have my radar detector and stuff inside of this area here, which we'll talk about later. That's just a small cubby. Can't really store much in there. And then this has a actual lever, manual parking brake in it, not an electronic one. At the top here, then you have all your standard stuff. This is automatic climate control. You have pretty much all standard. There's your CD player in this particular case. Presets for anything, whether it be the radio, Sirius satellite, whatever it may be. And you could change your modes and stuff like that. Although all this is controllable from the steering wheel, which we'll go over. At the top here you have your standard vents, and then of course this knob right here is so misunderstood. This has been on a BMW for forever. BMW's had this knob on here. And what it is just for these vents right here, it lets you adjust the temperature. So even if your temperature down here is say set to, I don't know, 80 or something, up here you could actually push that down so that it's cooler air coming out here blowing on your face. So you can still keep the car sort of warm, but still have a cool air blowing on your face if you wanted to. So that's what this temperature knob does right here. It just changes it a little bit for these two vents. And then there's your door lock button and your hazard control. And then that's the iDrive display at the top here, which we'll see that when it's on. The mirror itself is again chromatic mirror, just like on the R. However, it does have HomeLink. So if you watched my other video, you know I was complaining that the R doesn't come with HomeLink. You have to pay and buy a whole new mirror, where this does come with the HomeLink. And then the clown nose here has been typical on BMWs forever. They call it the clown nose because it's a little big button sort of nose here that blinks red. It's just for the alarm to let you know it's been armed, but they call it the clown nose on BMWs. At the top here we have the SOS service button, and of course the light controls for the interior lighting. And then on the visors, same standard mirrors with lights. This is just like, if you notice, it's just like the R has a light at the top, and then the mirror here, when you open up, the light comes on. Up here is a microphone, so I got the enhanced USB package, so there's actually a mic on this side and a mic on the driver's side, which is for obviously voice control or making phone calls and things like that. So if you get the enhanced, you get a couple more features, and one of them is an extra mic on this side. It does have a center console right here, so if you open that up, there's just storage in here. This is where the USB port is inside of here. So you can see that right there. I have my iPod connected to it. It also has a snap-in plug-in for your iPhone here, where you can plug that, snap it right in for charging, connecting your iPhone. And then this actually moves forward and back, so you can move it back or you can move it forward depending where you want it. You can adjust it up and down like on the R, but you can move it forward and back. So as I said before, the seats are all full power, except this side has these memory buttons, which are really nice. So when you take it to service or somebody else gets in your car and they mess up your seat, you can just hit the button and it puts it right back to where it was. So that's really convenient. One other thing I forgot to mention is these little clips right here on the back of the seats. That's for the seatbelt holder. So if you want to, you can actually put your seatbelt right in there so that it's easier to grab when you need to reach back and grab it. So it does have that little feature. On the driver's side here, of course, we have the window controls just like on the other side, except this also has the mirror controls. Now this also has power folding mirrors, so that's what this button is here, and you can actually fold the mirrors in. So That way, if you're pulling into a garage or something, you can have them closer to the car. The Golf R does not have that feature. They're just manual folding mirrors, but these do have power folding mirrors. And also, when you put the car in reverse, the passenger side mirror dips down so you can see the curb. So that's another feature that they have on the M. If you come into the pedals here, if you remember on the R, they were kind of fancier. They had chrome going around them like stainless steel. These are just plain black pedals on the accelerator and the brake. And then over here we do have some stainless steel on the M footrest pedal. One thing on the M they did do, which is really nice, is instead of like pulling the hood latch release here once and then going out and having to hit the latch underneath the hood in the front and finding it, you just pull this twice and the hood is completely released. You don't have to reach under the edge of the hood and try to find the secondary latch. So that's kind of nice. And then they do have a trunk release button right here, where if you punch, just push that, the trunk will pop open automatically. There is no cubby here like there was on the Golf, but they do have the buttons here to turn on and off all the safety systems, blind spot monitoring, you know, keeping you the lane guidance, etc. So that's all right here if you want to turn any of those on or off. And then of course you have the standard lighting controls. You have automatic headlights, and then you have the ambient light control right there. And then on the side of the steering wheel we have the standard lever here for the telescoping and tilt, so manual just like on the Golf. But it does have this extra button right here for heated steering wheel, which is really nice in the winter time. Although, you know, this car never actually gets driven in any kind of inclement weather. It's really just for those clear, cold days in winter where I'm taking it out and the roads are clear. But besides that, when I do take it out and it's really cold out, it's really nice when the steering wheel heats up, keeps your hands nice and toasty. Okay, and then this is the M steering wheel, really nice looking. Again, it's a nice feel, not too big, just like the R, really nice feel. It's got this great grip to it, thick. You have the controls over here for both cruise control and then also the M presets, which we'll talk about. And then on the right hand side is where we have our controls for telephone, voice control, and then all your media control, like adjusting the volume and then scrolling through different menus and lists. This is the M wheel, so it has the tricolor stitching on it, which looks really cool on it, so I do like that a lot. On the left hand side here, this particular stalk basically is of course the turn signal control, and then it's also where you turn on and off the automatic headlights. So that's what this lower button is for. The BC is to change the menus on the dash here, so we'll go over that portion of it. And then of course you can manually do your high beams if you want to, but if you do the automatic, then the high beams come on and off by themselves. On the right hand side here we have the wiper control. So this is same as the R, where you have rain sensing wipers. This one you do have to hit the button each time you want to turn it on, though, on the right hand side there. So if you start the car and you're driving and it's raining, you have to hit it once and then you're good for the rest of your trip, and then it'll adjust the wipers based on how much rain is coming down. And of course you have the little lever to adjust the sensitivity just like you did on the R. So that's pretty much all the same there. One note about the turn signal, BMW does not use a mechanical turn signal, it's all electronic. So if I hit this, you can feel it, there's detents on it, which is nice, but unlike the R, where you actually have to turn the wheel a certain amount because it's mechanical for it to release, this uses a sensor on the steering column, so that if you're doing like a turn where it's just sort of a partial turn, you're not making a full 90-degree turn, it will turn off the turn signal. Whereas in the R, of course, if you don't turn the wheel far enough, it won't mechanically release, and then you're driving down the road, you know, with your turn signal blinking, and you don't even know it. So that's the one nice thing about the M turn signal. It's all electronic. And to turn it off, you can, like, if you turned it on and you want to quickly turn it off, you can just tap it either direction. It doesn't matter, and it'll turn it off because it's electronic. So that's kind of a nice little feature there. This is the dash here. It's partial electronic and partial analog, so the mechanical gauges, like when you turn the car on, you'll see all the interior stuff will start appearing, and again, those menus change based on what's going on in the car. But then you have the standard mechanical speedometer, tachometer, oh, hold on, let me turn off this air. And then you have the gas gauge, and of course this is oil temperature, not coolant temperature on the right here. Okay, and then down below it'll tell you the gear you're in, and all that changes because that's all TFT display in the middle and the bottom. So we'll go over that whole menu a little bit later. Okay, and of course these are all the buttons for the controls for suspension, drive, the transmission, the steering, the adjustments for park distance, the cameras. That's also where you do the park assist. So this does have that feature where the car will automatically parallel park itself. I've never used it. I don't think I ever will. I'm not sure I'm going to trust the computer to park a $90,000 car, parallel park it. You know, if it happens to make a mistake and rub the wheels against the curb or something like that, I don't think so. So, but it is in here. It's a feature. It was only $500 more, so I just tacked it on, but I've never used it and probably never will, to be honest with you. So and that's the iDrive window right here. So we'll go over iDrive and all the stuff that's there. I don't know if you can see it on here because it probably looks really far away, even though it's not on the car. But there's right now it's giving a speed limit sign and a speed. That's the heads-up display there, and that display changes depending what you're doing. So I don't know if you can see it in the camera. There might be a problem here with the camera seeing it, but I'm scrolling through my playlist right here on the window right now. So we'll go over the heads-up display, but that is a cool feature, and I wish all cars had it in because it's really convenient. Okay, oh, and the mirror does have a compass in it, so it's compass on the right hand side there. I think that's it for the interior portion of it. Oh, there is again a set of speaker. There's a mid-range and a tweeter here. There's also a speaker right in the middle here, big mid-range, and underneath the seats. And I'm not sure if the camera's going to get it here, but underneath the seats there are there's a subwoofer under each of the front seats. So that's where they have the subwoofers located, and they go down into the body to create the sort of the cavity that creates that the sound. All right. Let's see. I think that is it on the interior portion. I think I covered the same things I did on the Golf R. Now just a comment about the sound system. It is a really good sound system. It has an equalizer on it, which the R does not. And it sounds pretty good, but there's a company called Bavarian Soundworks that makes a stage 1 upgrade, and you can replace all these speakers with better quality ones, and the same thing with the subwoofers, and it makes a huge difference in the sound. So just FYI. Okay, let's talk about the auto start stop. So just like the Golf, it has the start stop. You know, when you come to a complete stop, it stops the engine, and then when you hit the gas, it starts up again to save, you know, on fuel, for fuel economy, etc. Again, that's an annoying feature I don't like. And what's nice about the M is it has that button right at the top there where it says off. So when you hit that, it disables that feature, and it stays disabled unless I would hit that button again. So that is kind of nice. Whereas in my previous video with the Golf, if you remember, I said that the Golf makes you do it each time you get in the car unless you're in a certain driving mode. So that's the one little difference, and it's nice that you can just disable it if you needed to. The other thing I forgot to talk about were the paddle shifters. I've got the plus and the minus, just like on the R. And again, this is a dual clutch transmission, so it's really sort of like a combination manual automatic. So you should treat it like a manual because it acts exactly like one, because it actually has 2 clutches that are engaging with the engine, as opposed to a a torque converter, which is always engaged. So because of that, you have to use the parking brake when you're parking the car. If you're on a hill and you let off the brake pedal, after the hill assist disengages, it will roll back. So it's exactly like a manual as far as that goes. So you have to treat it that way. So, but it's the same thing. If you're in fully sequential manual mode, then you can use the paddle shifters to shift. And again, it's just a pull one direction, and this is upshifting, that's downshifting. And again, kind of nice that you don't have to kind of figure out, do I have to push it forward, do I have to pull it back? It doesn't work that way. These are just always, you pull them towards you, and it's either upshifting or downshifting depending whether you're doing the plus or the minus. So that's kind of all the same as far as that goes there. So just a quick note on those couple things. And then on the controls for the transmission, we do have the drive logic control. So the transmission has 3 drive logic levels, which are here. And then, of course, the buttons for the, accelerator response, the suspension, and the steering response. So we'll see all those change inside the display when we get to that point. As far as the climate control, I did already talk about this is automatic climate control. So, if you hit the button, it'll automatically give you whatever temperature you set. The one thing that was amiss on the BMW for some weird reason is it does not have a sync button. So what that means is if I change the temperature on the driver's side, like if I change it to a little higher, 66, you notice on the passenger side it still stays at 60. And so you actually have to do both buttons to make them match. Whereas with the sync button, what that means is that when you turn the one, it changes the other at the same time. So because of that, they've always had a sync button on the BMWs. I don't know why it's missing. I know they don't have a lot of room here, but I'm sure they could have figured out something in order to turn sync on or off, or even in the iDrive if you could do it up there. But it is missing, and it's kind of a pain because when you change your temperature over here, you got to look away again from the road to change it on the other side too at the same time. So that's the one thing missing. Otherwise, everything's the same. Heated seats. You got, front, rear defrost, changing all your fan speeds. You can make it in fully automatic temperature control mode, so it just automatically adjusts everything to keep it at the same temperature, max AC. You can have recirculation. So all the standard stuff in the climate control. So that's no different. The CD player is actually right here on the dash. I never use it, of course, because I'm always connected with my phone and the MP3s, but it's there. And then you have manual mode buttons to change between the different modes, although you can use the iDrive controller for that, so I've actually never touched those buttons either. And then the presets are, like if you hold your finger over one of the preset buttons, it will actually tell you what the preset is up on the display here. So if you notice, I'm at the top of the display here. If I put my finger over the preset, you see nothing's assigned to these, but you can actually assign them to different things in the car, not just music or station presets. So if there's a certain preset in iDrive that you want, you can actually, like map display for navigation or something, you could actually set it in the presets if you wanted to. So that's pretty much what that portion does. Now, the one thing it does have is, if you have the radio on, if you looked at my other video, you know I was complaining about not having a mute button on the Volkswagen. So this does have a mute by just pushing it, and you're muted it, and you haven't turned off the system. So the system's still on, you just muted the sound on it. So if you're on satellite radio or something, you can mute it real quick without having to turn the dial all the way down. So it has a nice mute feature. And then that's pretty much it for that section there. So everything else is inside iDrive, which is controlled by this controller, which is kind of like the infotainment system on the VW, where you had the touch screen where you touched it. This does not have a touch screen. Everything's controlled through the iDrive controller. Now, this is a 2016. BMW has since changed that. I think actually the next year they upgraded the iDrive to a touch screen in addition to the controller. So you have both now. And they changed the software and the user interface, so it's a little bit more modern. So simple you know, even a car that's only 2 years old can get out of date really quickly as far as the technology. It's moving so fast. So, but that's what that portion is. So that's all the main pieces here. Okay, so as I talked about before in the TFT display, basically you have the mechanical gauges, and then in the middle and down below is all the actual TFT display stuff. So you can see in the middle you have the trip mileage, the mileage of the car. There's the miles per hour going right in the center there. And then you have the, you know, some indicators for like whether your lights are on, all the different things at the bottom. The main important stuff though is right here actually on the below the tachometer here, where you see below where it says it's in park. It has your settings there for your accelerator or engine response, the suspension, and then the steering. So those directly correspond to these buttons down here and what you set with these buttons, and also corresponds to these here, these presets called M1 and M2. So if you notice right now, it's set to efficient sport, which is its default setting when you turn on the car. So actually let's just start up the car here for a second. Alright, so you can see right here it says efficient, sport, and sport. If I go back to my preset here, now this is all handled in iDrive, how you set up these presets, but just so you can see how it works, if I hit my M1 button on the steering wheel, you can see that it's now changed to Sport Plus for the engine response, the accelerator response, the suspension is in comfort mode, and the steering is in sport mode. And then it also says M1 right there, right next to it, so that tells me the preset I'm in. And then you can have a second preset, so if you had a second preset, then you could set that up too. Okay, so depending how you can have two different presets. So that was kind of like the mode, the custom mode on the Golf R, where you could set up a custom mode, but here you can have two. Now, if you watch these, if I just on the fly hit one of these buttons here, so let's say the steering button on the bottom here, and I go over here, you can see as I hit the button each time I hit it. So right now I'm in Sport, now I'm in Sport Plus, and then I'm in comfort mode. So you have three modes: Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. Same thing with the suspension. You got Sport, Sport Plus, Comfort, and then on the engine response, accelerator response, you got Efficient, Sport, and Sport Plus. And it actually changes in the middle here as you're doing it too, so it's actually reading them out for you at the same time in the middle, depending which one you're picking. Now, each one of these in combination with the other affects how the car handles, how the car responds as far as the steering goes. So if you have something in comfort mode, it's like, you know, for the steering, for instance, it's a very light steering, very easy to steer, a little sloppier, and you can't feel the road as much. Whereas you have it in Sport or Sport Plus, then you get a much tighter steering, you can feel the road more. It's a little heavier steering, so it requires a little more effort, but you know, depending what you like. Same thing with the suspension. So obviously Comfort is a softer suspension. Sport Plus would be a much stiffer suspension, but you know, better handling. And then same thing with the accelerator response, as far as like how quickly the accelerator responds, and the transmission shifting, etc. So all those different types of things are control that. And then it also affects the valves and the exhaust and the sound that's coming out. So you have a combination of all those things that you can set here. Okay. In addition to that, there's one more setting here, which is this drive logic setting on the transmission. So this affects the shift points of the transmission. And you see there's three sort of lines here, and those correspond to what you see on the dash here when you're actually in drive. So if you put the car in drive, okay, you see there's those three hash marks right there. And so basically as you hit this button, they change depending on how you want the car to respond. And there's pretty significant difference on each of these levels here on the shift points and how the transmission responds. So all of these can be combined. So if I hit my M1 button, you can see on M1 I'm at drive logic mode 3 on the transmission, which is the most aggressive, and then Sport Plus is the most aggressive accelerator response, engine response, and then the comfort mode for the suspension, and Sport for the steering response. So, and you can set all these different ones up depending on what you want. And then on top of that, there's a mode called M mode, which really what M mode does is it allows you to turn off all the nannies, the safety systems. It's a more aggressive mode. So if you're doing racing or you're trying to do launch control or something like that, all the safety systems, like, you know, stability control, all that stuff is turned off. And obviously it's a much more aggressive mode. So you can also put it in M mode on top of that. Okay, so you have all those different things, and they will appear in the display here, and all this stuff changes as you're going along. So obviously in the middle there it has the safety system, so if you're, you know, the lane departure warning and all those types of things appear in the display also. So all that changes based on what's going on inside the display itself. Now, in addition to that, again, I don't think you can see it in the camera, just because it's, for some reason, the camera won't pick up the heads-up display correctly. I'm not sure what it is. It looks like it's really far away, but it's really big in front of you when you're in the car. But anyway, the heads-up display, which has all the information that's, you know, on the dash displayed in front of you right directly on the windshield, looks like it's floating in the air, can be adjusted up and down and tilted. So if it's, you know, you can adjust how high you want it in front of you. So I have it actually just below my eye line, and then you can you know, tilt it left and right to depending which way you want it. So there's an adjustment in here that lets you adjust the where the heads-up display appears on the windshield in front of you. So that's sort of another nice feature. Alright, so as far as the iDrive goes itself, it's, you know, similar to the VW infotainment system. Basically all your stuff is up here. The one nice thing about this that the VW sort of doesn't have is you can have a split window. So if you want to see two different types of information all at the same time, you don't have to go into, you know, hit the buttons on the screen to go into different views. So this, you can see I keep the weather and the time on the right hand side all the time. So this is the current weather for like the next 3 days, and then the time here is always displayed on the right hand side, and on the left hand side is where I have whatever what mode I'm in. Right now I'm in the Sirius Satellite XM, so it's showing me that channel that I'm on right now and all the things that go with that. There's always the time at the top. This little envelope here tells me if I have any mail or messages that came in, and then that gives me my signal for my phone, and then you can see it's on mute right now. It has a little mute button, etc. So just gives you some basic information. And then on the left is always the menus that you would scroll down with the iDrive controller. So this knob right here, you just turn it, and as you're turning it, it basically goes down these menus. And it's just like sort of a mouse where you turn it to the menu you want to go to, and then once you find the menu, you can just hit the you just push it, and then it'll be right where you want to be. So that's channel 14. If I wanted to change the channels, I can quickly scroll through them. If I wanted to, you just hit the button, and then it'll switch to whatever channel that you're looking for. You can also do it by, you know, channel lists if you want to see the actual descriptions of the channels. You can make favorites. It's, you know, kind of all the same thing. The difference is when you want to go back a menu, that you just push it to the left or the right, basically which way you want to go, and then it'll go back through these menus. So it's a 4-position controller, just like you'd have on your remote for your TV or something, where you just go up and down, left and right, and then you push the center to accept the entry, and then you can turn the dial to scroll through the different things, whatever they may be. So this just lets you, you know, you can have favorites and all that kind of stuff. And then if you can go back to the different modes if you wanted to. Like if you want to switch to radio, you go back further to the main menu, so they can pick different things like multimedia. Like if you want to do external devices like the iPod and whatever your devices are, you can pick your device right? And then inside that device, you know, if I want to just go to playlists or do a music search, whatever you're trying to do, you can select that choice. I can choice by artist or something, and then, you know, you can select whatever you need to on the different, you know, menus. So you can also use voice control, just like on the other system, but the iDrive controller is actually really easy to use, so it's not hard at all. It does have these main buttons here, so kind of like on the infotainment system in the VW, you have your main menus for each of the main topics. So if you want to quickly get to navigation or the telephone or something, you can click it. So if I hit navigation here, it just automatically jumps to the navigation system, and then I can, you know, on the left hand side, you go through the menus to do whatever you want. Voice instructions, guidance, routes, you know, depending what you're trying to do on the menu. So it's pretty much the same as far as all that goes, and they both really have almost the same features. It's just a different way. You're touching the screen on the VW, you're actually touching the buttons, and down here you're just using the iDrive controller to get to the same area. The one difference is this pad right here is actually a pad where you can write on with your finger if you wanted to. So for instance, in the navigation system, if you wanted to do a new route or add a destination, let me go back here. So I want to enter address, you know, if I want to enter a house number or whatever I'm going to. You can use the controller to pick your numbers if you want to. You can use voice import if you just want to say it. Or on the dial here, you can just type it with your finger. You just make a letter on the top of the dial, like 2, and then it does a 2 or 3, whatever it may be, and then it puts those letters up at the top there, depending what it is. You do have to make sure you're clear on what you type, so if it's not clear, then it won't pick it up correctly. So if I do 3 here, you gotta make sure it makes a 3 so it picks it up. If you do partial, like let me do like that, I didn't get the whole 3, then it thinks it's a 2. So depends on what it is. But you can put that in there, and then you're going to the street here. Sometimes it's easier, you know, depending what it is. It just picks up each letter. I don't know which is faster, just saying it or putting it in, depending what you're trying to do. But you have to be accurate the way you're touching the top of the pad here when you're using your finger. But it's just another way to do it. Some of the stuff is just overkill, I think, you know. Seems cool, but in real life you just don't use it. Like what I do is I go on my phone to Google Maps and I just put in the address and find it on there, and then I hit the send to phone. So the BMW app lets you look up the address in a map, and then you just hit send to car, and it will actually send it to the car. And what happens is it shows up again when you're in wherever you happen to be. Like say I'm here on my main menu or whatever it may be. At the top where you saw that where we were before, it would actually show you the little envelope. Like right here there's an envelope, and if there's something in there, it'll show it, and then you can go to that, and then that will be the address that you sent to the car, and then you just say start guidance, and it's much easier. So rather than having to go through the knobs or doing the voice control or whatever, I just go on my phone in the BMW app, type the address to find it, and then send it to the car, and simple as that. So much easier. But there's like 4 ways to do pretty much everything. So you have all these main menus here. If you want to go back a menu, you can do that, and then you have the option menu, which when you hit that, there's just options for split screen and different types of things that are in this menu. But each one is based on whichever main menu you're in. So I'm in the navigation right now. If I go to the radio menu, for instance, and I hit options, and I get some different ones here, depending what I'm trying to do. So you got the main radio, FM, AM, satellite radio. You've got your media section, which is anything's connected to the car, whether your phone, iPod, whatever it may be. You got the telephone menu, so that'll have all your contacts in here, depending what you're trying to do. And then your navigation menu. That's the main ones. The main menu then has all the different the same things on it, but then it has additional things. That you can see Office right here. This is where you're if you receive some messages, then it would give you your messages. So there's the ones like, for instance, these are addresses that I sent from the phone to the car. And if you want to go to that particular address when you open up the message, there it is. And you could actually just say start guidance. And that would then take that and put it right in the navigation systems and start your guidance. So the Office has those particular things. So messages, contacts, notes, anything that comes in from the outside would go into the Office menu. The Connected Drive menu, basically if you get text messages, if you need roadside assistance, BMW Online, like you can browse the internet and all this kind of stuff. I don't know why you'd be browsing the internet through your car. I mean, you can do it on your phone or anything like that, but it's all in there. If you want to make a service request, you can. So if your car needs to go in for service or something. So all that's sort of available inside there. The vehicle info section basically has, you know, all the main stuff for owner's manuals and all that kind of stuff. But you can also see the vehicle status. Sports displays was kind of the same thing we saw on the Golf, where you can have all these different statistics for performance in here, power and torque and all this kind of stuff displayed. If you want to, trip lap times and all that kind of stuff. And then you notice there's these double arrows here, so that means you can go left and right in the menus. So when you're on something and you go right, then it'll give you different sub menus on the right hand side that you can do things with. So depending what you're trying to do. I think this is the piece that people get confused by. They don't understand how to navigate through iDrive. But pretty much that's the different stuff you can do with it. So settings, now this is where you're going to make all your main settings for things like these are your presets for your M. So you can see here's my M1 preset. So if I go into that, this has all the different settings for what I picked. So whether you have the dynamic stability control on or off, sport, your steering, your suspension, you know, your transmission drive logic modes, and then you can also have different views. So for instance, this is the default view for the M1, but I can also switch it to M view if I wanted to, and what happens is in that view then it changes on the display right here. So if I start the car up here real quick, alright, put it in drive. Okay, I got my menus there, and if I hit the M1, okay, now you can't see it probably, but on the HUD display there is now a totally different view here for the gear I'm in and the miles per hour. I'm not sure you can see it. I don't know if I see it on the camera here, but so it completely changes the way the view works, and it's the shifting view basically. It's going to give you your tack there so you can see where the engine RPMs are as you're shifting between gears. So that view will change based on what you're doing, and then that does affect other things in the view. So when you're doing your scrolling through your music and things like that, it'll affect it depending. So you have to sort of decide which view do you like better. So in my particular case, I like the standard default view in this particular menu for my one setting that I have right here. Okay, and that gives me the different views for things like my not only my speed limit signs and the speed I'm going, but it'll scroll through my music, it'll give me my navigation directions, everything will appear in the heads-up display in front of me. So that will be the difference between those two views. But you can obviously have two different presets. So in your second view, then you can have whatever you want here. So the M dynamic driving mode you could turn on here in this particular case, and then you can see there's some warnings here about that and what it's going to actually turn off, which is all the safety systems. But So you have those different things. On the heads-up display itself, you can decide the brightness, the height, and the rotation of the heads-up display, whether you want it on or off, so you have all those different choices. The instrument cluster, these are all the different things that you can have display in the instrument cluster. You can turn all these things on and off. Okay, so again, sort of like the same thing on the VW, where you have control over the display itself. You can have brightness at night display here, what you want that to be, time and date, the touchpad, which is on the that thing I was just talking about. So if you want to have the speller, the map, the audio feedback, all those things. So as you're putting each letter in, it can give you feedback what it thought you just put in. Your connections, which is Bluetooth connections, so how many phones you have connected to the car. You can have multiples because of the enhanced USB package. The tone is basically a sound system, so you do have the standard treble, bass, balance, fader, but it also does have the equalizer here, which is the one thing that the R does not have. So you do have a full equalizer to adjust all those different types of settings. And then Logic 7 surround sound on or off, depending if you want that turned on and off. And then the volume settings let you change all the different settings, like just like on the Golf, where you can change if you want the volume to go up as your speed increases, your park distance control beeps, the volume, the gong for the you know, when you're reversing, things like that. So you have all those different types of volume settings that you can set inside the system. The speed, you can set warnings at a particular speed limit, so if you're exceeding that limit, then it'll give you a warning in the heads-up display and on the dash. The climate control, you can activate different timers to if you want the ventilation to continue on even after you've shut off the car, to keep it cool or warm. Lighting lets you control the ambient lighting, so you can actually change the color. You know, if you want it orange, or white, there's different color lightings, the brightness of it. If you want pathway lighting, so that's where, you know, of course, when you shut the car off, the headlights stay on, so it lights your way up to the house. And then if you want the triple turn signal, daytime running lamps, all these things turned on and off. So doors, keys, this is just if you want the doors to lock or unlock. Same thing with the trunk, lock after you start driving it. If you want some kind of flash or acoustic, like if you want a sound when you lock the car and lock it, that kind of stuff, you can turn all that stuff on and off. Last seat position automatically set. So again, just like the R, the keys, the actual key fobs can actually hold profiles for each individual person that would hold your individual settings, like your seat position, your climate control settings, all that stuff, so that when the person gets in with that key fob, all those systems reset to whatever has been set in the key fob. The collision warning system, you can decide if you want it early, medium, or late. I always put everything early. Your different profiles that are in the car, software updates, and GPS tracking. So you can have it tracked so that you can always keep the position of your car in the GPS app. So excuse me, in the BMW app I meant. So if you park your car in a big lot, big event or something like that, and you want to come back and you forget where you parked it, you can look on your app and it'll take you to your car. So pretty much on the main menu you have all those, you know, same basic types of settings that you had in the R. So just different types of things depending what it is. The big difference are the drive settings. They're a little more advanced in the M than they are in the R, and you also have those 3 levels in the drive logic for the transmission. The other thing is, this is a electronic shifter, so it is not mechanical. There's no mechanical connection between it and the transmission. So like right now the car is in neutral and I have the parking brake on so it doesn't move, and that's what you would have to do, like say you were stopping at the ATM or something and you didn't want the car to move, because to put it in park you have to actually shut the car off. There's no park, if you notice on the shifter here. You can't just slam it into park and have the engine still running. The way it works is, like, right now the car is running, it's in neutral. So if I put the car in drive, so I'm in drive, and let's just say I pulled up to in the garage or something and I want to put it in park, you just hit the on-off button on the car to shut the car off, and you notice it went right to P. So it has sort of an automatic park. You don't actually touch the shifter. So I left it in drive basically, and the shifter is just it's just an electronic shifter. It moves up and down, left and right, etc. But there's no mechanical connection to anything. It's just a sensor that's telling the computers what to do. So the car automatically goes into park. A lot of people have problems with this for some weird reason. I don't know why. I mean, you pull up, you don't have to do anything. You just shut the engine off and it automatically goes into park for you. I don't think you can get easier than that. But people have left it in, for some reason they put it in neutral. They didn't put the e-brake on, and then the car's rolling. Just all kinds of weird stuff that's on the forums, which I don't really get. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, you just have to remember, if you want to stop somewhere and you want the engine to stay running, you just have to put it in neutral and make sure your parking brake is on. It's just like a manual. So just like a manual transmission, you'd put it in neutral. You'd let out the clutch and you'd leave the parking brake on, and then the car's not going to move. So it's the same way. There's no park that you can have with the engine running. So that's the one, you know, difference here. The Golf does allow you to just put it into park and then the car can stay running. So the shifter's a little bit different, and of course you can shift with it on the shifter. You can see the minus and plus here. The reverse is also a little bit different. So it's sort of like a manual where you have to actually go left and then up. So you have to go left and then push it up to get into reverse. So, and then you just push it over and you're in drive. So pretty easy to use if you know, if you actually read the manual and you know how to do it. It's easy to use, but for some reason a lot of people get confused on that portion of it. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it here, but there's a big screen right here, down right behind the dash. That's where the heads-up display is. And then I think that's pretty much it as far as that goes. I think I covered almost everything else in the car. So really the only thing left for the most part is the test drive. I forgot one thing. So they do have this park distance button right here. So on the display, if you actually hit that, you can see it actually changes to a view. It's actually an overhead view of the car, so you can actually see where you are. So if you're pulling into a tight space, it'll actually show you almost like it's like looking down in an overhead view of the car on the two walls on the different sides, so you can actually see where you are and pull in. Of course, it automatically switches to the reverse camera when you are, you know, in reverse, and then you'll get the camera. The little yellow lines will tell you, like, you know, your park distance sensors, and if it sees something close by, and it'll give you the beeps as you're hearing there, and then the little display to see how close you are to something. But it sees the car behind me, so that's why it's sort of beeping already. And then on the left-hand side here, you can see there's some menus: rear view camera, and you can change the if you want the parking aid lines turned on and off, obstacle marking. They have all kinds of settings for the different things and how you want to see it. There's the parking assistant itself. So, and of course, if you put it in drive, then eventually the camera will disappear, and then you'll be back to the normal drive mode. So, but that's all the camera stuff basically that you'll see. Okay, a couple of things I forgot. One is the lane departure system on the M works a little bit different than on the R. So on the M, if you're veering out of your lane, the steering wheel will actually vibrate. You'll feel this vibration, kind of like your phone vibrates, same type of thing. You'll feel it in the steering wheel to let you know you're veering out of your lane. Whereas the R, actually, the car will actually steer you back into the lane by itself. So the car kind of takes over the steering and pulls you back into the lane. So on that, you kind of feel the steering tugging and kind of fighting you a little bit when it pulls it back into the lane. So that was kind of surprising the first time it happened. But they work totally different in the way that the lane departure systems operate. The other thing I forgot is on the stock here, remember I said this little BC button is for the cluster, and it changes what you see here. So just so you can see that, if I hit this button, you can see every time I switch it, I get something different. Like that's the time, the temperature, the miles till empty, miles per gallon, miles per hour, the speed limit, last speed limit sign at red, the date, okay, and then nothing. You get a basic blank there. So you have the different options that you can set with that stock. The other thing that does is I actually have another module that I installed on this for the exhaust valves. So you can actually hold that button in, and each time you hold it in, the turn signal lights will blink on the dash here to let you know the settings. So if I hold this button in right here for a second, you can see that there was one blink, and that means that the exhaust valves are now open completely, and they'll stay open. So it overrides what the car wants to do with the exhaust valves. If I hold it again, I get a right signal that tells me they're closed. So now they'll stay closed, so they'll be quieter no matter what. And then if I hold it again, I get the double lights come up, and that means that it's back to the default factory normal mode, and they'll open and close based on what the car wants to do. So if you always want to have your valves open, it's nice because you can just hit this button on the stock and then you can change it. And so that changes the sound of the car. So if you're driving along and you want to get some exhaust sound, and you want to keep your valves open all the time, it makes a difference on downshifts. It gives you that burble and pop and stuff like that when it's downshifting and things like that. So it's just an additional module that plugs into the OBD port that gives you that option. And then it also gives you some options as far as like automatically folding the mirrors on the outside here when you like lock the car. So when you get out of the car and you lock it, the mirrors automatically fold by themselves, which is not something that happens by default from the factory. It also automatically rolls up the windows if any of them are open. So the module has a bunch of settings that you can set with your laptop, and have all these default settings for things that normally we'd have to code on the car. But there were some things that we did code on the car because there's some just annoying things that they come from the default factory, and that is like, for instance, when the car is running and you hit the stop start button, the car shuts off as far as the engine goes, but the radio and everything is still on. So all the electronics are still on. And you have two choices basically. You can either hit this button again to turn off all electronics, or you can get out of the car and then when you lock it, the electronics turn off. Well, what's really annoying about this is if you have your music blasting or whatever it may be, now you have to open the door, get out of the car. If it's late at night, you're disturbing everybody or whatever, and it won't actually shut down the electronics until you lock the car. Also, if you're just getting out of the car for maybe 20 minutes or something, then all this stuff is running during that whole time, which is kind of dumb too. So you either have to hit the button twice, or if you code the car, which means you're gonna change the programming on it, then you can do what I did, was I coded it so that when you open the door, it immediately shuts all electronics off, which is what pretty much most cars do today. So I'm not sure why BMW makes it so that you have to hit the button twice, which is really annoying. So right now the radio's playing right here, and if I just open the door, everything shuts off, all electronics shut off, and I can get out and I don't have to lock the car to make everything shut down. Whereas before, if I had the car running and it'd be running, I got the radio on, if I want to actually shut the car off, you hit the button. I would have to hit the button again to make it all shut down, because even if I open the door, nothing would happen. So now, because I coded the car to shut down on the door open, now everything shuts down the way it should. So we did that coding. I also did coding where, let me turn on the car again here. But if you're in the car and you're opening the window and then you open the car door, you notice the window kept going. The default from the factory is that if you roll down your window and you open the door while it's in the middle of coming down, it just stops. I have no idea. I can't think of a safety issue of why they would prevent the window from rolling completely down. Okay? But if you open your door, it will not continue down by default. So we coded that so that basically if you open the door while the window's in the midst of rolling down, it'll keep rolling down and it won't stop. So there were just a couple of small things that I coded off that I didn't like. So like for instance, every time the nav starts up, you had to hit this button to go by the disclaimer, the legal disclaimer, which is, you know, nobody wants to read that stuff either. Again, just more stuff for the US lawyers, but turned all that type of stuff off. So only coded a couple things. The mirrors, the auto fold and the windows auto rolling up when you hit the lock and everything, that, you know, you can code, but because that module that I bought for the exhaust valves also included that, I didn't actually have to do that. But those are all types of things that you can code on the car. So you just hook your laptop up to the car using the UBD cable and then have the software to be able to program it and then change the coding on the car. So VW has a similar type of thing on their side for different things. I don't think there's anything right now that I can think of on that car, although I haven't lived with it that long, but pretty much all the sort of the annoyances that were on this car, they don't have on the VW, so I don't think that's going to be a big issue on that side. But those are a couple things that you can change by doing coding and changing the actual computer modules on the car to tell it to do something different. It's you know, the settings are all in there in the modules. It's not like you're, you know, rewriting all the programming. It's just you're flipping it from one setting to another. It's just that, you know, BMW uses different settings depending on what part of the world the car is going to and the laws for those countries, etc. So it's just a couple things to keep in mind. So and then I think that was it. That was pretty much the main extra topic I wanted to cover. Alright, so let's start our test drive. Let's start the car up. Ways to love you. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to put it in M1 mode. And then we are going to open up the valves. So we're going to hold our button on our stock once. And I don't know if you could hear the difference, but the valves are open, so it's louder now. So first we'll just do it in a normal drive mode, but then we'll do it in sequential mode. We'll go get a burger. Now when you tap the pedal, it actually will do like a slow speed crawl for things like if you're in traffic, because again, it acts like a manual. It'd be like if you were in a manual and had to push the clutch in. Stop, you slow down, you can hear the engine rev. Want to put it in fully sequential mode, you actually don't even have to touch the shifter. You can just hit one of the paddles and then I'll do it. So if I want to downshift or upshift, I can just hit the paddle. Now I'm in sequential mode, so now I have to shift it myself. So I can downshift and really make it rev. just like they are. Great handling. It's just a bigger car you have to worry about. So we're gonna park it over here where nobody's around. And we'll be right back. We're gonna go get a burger. Okay, we're back home so we can eat our burger. So again, I'm gonna put it in M1 preset. We're going to open the exhaust valves. And off we go. I could have the windows open a little bit so you could actually hear the exhaust a little better, but hopefully the camera's picking up a little bit of it. Driveway here. Okay, so I'm not doing anything except hitting the stop-start button, and the car went into park and put on the parking brake, and you're pretty much set. So that's it for our quick little test drive.